Hello there, Internet. Welcome to another episode of Weekly Art Tips. I'm your host, Ando, and we're going to be continuing our technique series on how to bind your very own sketchbooks. The first book we made was the section sewn book. You can go check the link to that video. And this week we're going to be doing long stitch. And it's not gonna lie quite as flat as the first book, but it's going to look pretty nice if you add a kind of leather cover. So again, we're going to make our cardboard guide. We're going to have 6 holes on it this time, and they're going to be 3 groups of 2 stuck very close together. So poke out those holes just like you did with the first set, and do that with all of the signatures that you choose to include. Next, you're going to grab yourself a piece of fake leather, or real leather, depending on how much you want to spend on this book. I grabbed this one that's pretty thick and it has a nice fabric-y backing. You can go get this at Joann's or any type of craft store that sells fabric. So you're going to measure out your cover so that it is roughly the same size as your signatures. It doesn't have to be exact because, like in the first one, we are going to be trimming this down in the end. So after you've cut out the size that you want to use for your cover, you're going to put that aside and go grab yourself another piece of paper, because there's going to be a design on the backing of this piece of fabric. If you use real leather, you're not going to have this issue, but if you used a fake leather like I did, it would look a lot better if you put a type of paper backing on it. So I went to the craft store and found myself a nice map design that I'm going to use. So gonna just put some adhesive on it, put that together, trim it down, and that's going to look fantastic. Next, you're going to start doing your punctures in the cover, because the binding goes through the cover to the front. So take your guide and poke out all of the holes right in the middle, and then work out on each side for all of the signatures that you have. This works best if you have an odd number of signatures. So you might have to just eyeball it for this one, because it is going to be a bit difficult to get an exact size. If you feel like sitting down, doing the math, and getting it completely perfect, then that is fantastic. I just decided to make a brief assumption on where my holes should be. I just worked with the first one just to get it correct. So after you have all of the holes punctured through your cover, you're going to go grab yourself some thread and a needle and begin sewing your signatures. So you're going to start on the second hole that you've punctured in your first signature. Pull that through the signature, and then also pull it through the cover that you created. And that's going to be on the outermost set of punctures that you put on the cover. After you pull that through, make sure you leave a little tail at the end, so that way you can go back and tie it off. So pull it through to the next one down the line. You're going to leave that first hole empty for the time being. It's going to be a long stitch and then a short stitch on the inside. Continue down the line, and then you'll get to the end eventually. Once you get to this last stitch, instead of starting your next signature, you're going to instead go through the final hole that you just went through and leave just a tiny loop there. Make sure that it's not too wide, or else you're going to have a hard time tightening up the stitches at the end. So after you've re-entered your first stitching, you're going to go over all of the stitches that you made. So it's going to end up being double string on each stitch. After you get to the end of your first signature, you're going to go through that first stitch and then tie it off to the tail that you left before. Then you're going to pull it through to the outside and then go directly to the next stitch in the lineup. So do not worry about it going over the top of the leather, because that is what it's going to look like going across the front of the journal anyways. So once you get to your second signature, begin sewing it just like you did before. Get to the end, and once you get there, you're going to find that little loop, and if you did it correctly, there should be the little loop there still. If you get to a situation where the loop has eventually fallen through, you can always put your needle through the hole, find that piece of string, create a loop, go out the hole again, and then pull it tight. And that should give you the little loop back. Continue down the line, double stringing it again till you get to your third loop. But before you start that, go ahead and take your needle and then loop it through the stitch at the end, so you can create a lineup just like that. Do this with all of your signatures and then tie it off at the end. And eventually your back cover will look just like that. So once you finish that, you're going to notice that you're going to have to trim down all of these pieces of paper again. So after you do that, you'll have yourself a finished notebook. Looks pretty spiffy, and I'm really liking this map pattern. So that concludes our second video of our bookbinding series. Please join us next week as we finish it off with the Japanese stab binding technique. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.